Imagine you're tasked with engineering the perfect chart-topping pop hit.
Right, the ultimate pressure cooker.
Exactly. You are given access to the absolute highest tier of production talent, limitless studio time, and, a vocalist who possesses a truly generational talent.
And the expectations from the market are just astronomical.
Oh, off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the very first strategic move you execute?
Most people would say, lock the doors and work.
Right. But if you are the Korean vocal powerhouse Gwyn Dorado, you do something entirely counterintuitive. I mean, you literally stop recording.
You just walk right out of the studio.
Yeah. You walk completely away from this multi-million-dollar studio architecture, and you go look at some Rolling Stones on a beach.
It's fascinating.
Today, we are decoding exactly why that specific action is not a delay in the process, but the ultimate hit-making strategy. Welcome to Future_Music Deep Dive.
We are dissecting a very specific high-stakes operational reality today. I mean, to really understand the gravity of this beach trip, you have to understand the crucible these artists are operating within.
Right, the television program itself.
Exactly. It's called Famous Singers Need Hit Songs. And this is, well, it's the ultimate proving ground. You take the top 6 vocalists from the grueling, unforgiving, competitive landscape of Sing Again 4.
Which is an incredibly intense competition.
It really is. And you pair them with legendary, established Korean music producers.
And the objective of this program is highly specific. Like, it is not merely an artistic workshop or, some experimental jam session.
No, the stakes are way higher than that.
Way higher. The mandate is to forge a definitive, commercially viable hit song. We are talking about the deliberate transition of a competition vocalist into a sustained original market force.
Someone who has already proven they can interpret other people's music brilliantly under pressure.
Right. But the architecture of a hit song requires a completely different structural approach than winning a vocal battle.
And that transition represents an immense psychological burden. I mean, think about it. A competition requires you to be a flawless, athletic performer of existing emotions.
Yes, exactly. You're executing someone else's blueprint.
But writing your definitive hit song, that requires you to excavate your own personal history and present it for mass consumption.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We are going to decode the strategic pairing of Gwyn Dorado with the hip-hop and R&B powerhouse producer Code Kunst.
Such an interesting pairing.
It really is. We are going to analyze precisely how they are translating a deeply intimate memory into a mass-market hit, and crucially, how they are preserving the artist's mental well-being in an industry known for severe pressure.
Because reducing that psychological suffering is the only way to ensure the ultimate prosperity of the track.
Absolutely. So we begin with the strategic landscape of the Korean music industry, which is, frankly, defined by relentless forward-driving momentum.
Right, the algorithms never sleep.
They don't. The streaming platforms and audience attention spans demand constant output, so stepping out of the studio, especially when paired with a high-profile, in-demand producer like Code Kunst,
it requires a massive amount of cognitive override.
Yeah. But that is exactly what happened. We actually have a direct translation of a highly anticipated social media dispatch from Gwyn, written in Korean to her dedicated fan base, the Doraja.
And that dispatch is incredibly revealing. She writes, "Hi, Doraja. How has your week been? These past few days I've been recording with Code Kunst, and I really can't wait for you guys to hear the song."
Which immediately builds the hype.
Totally. Then she says, "It's about a precious object that I've had all my life." Can you guess what it is?
A brilliant narrative hook.
Right. But then she follows this hook with a critical update on her operational status. She notes that she took time off from recording to go to the beach to clear her mind.
And she explicitly asks her audience how they manage their own psychological resets.
Which is such a deeply empathetic move.
It is. But I submit a strategic challenge to you regarding this decision. In a hyper-competitive landscape, does taking a break risk losing necessary momentum?
Oh, that's the big question.
Right. Or is this exact pause the mandatory condition required to access the vulnerability needed for a chart-topping track?
I would argue it's absolutely mandatory.
I firmly agree. The production of a hit requires an authentic emotional core. And fatigue masks emotion.
It really does. You just go numb.
Exactly. You cannot engineer a genuine connection with an audience if the vocal delivery is compromised by exhaustion.
You really have to deconstruct the emotional profile of the artist in this moment. I mean, the act of stepping away from the studio to look at the ocean.
Right.
It is not a sign of operational weakness or, a lack of dedication. It is a vital executive function.
A strategic pause.
Precisely. It's specifically designed to reduce the suffering inherent in creative burnout. Yeah. And the fan base, the Dorado, they immediately recognize this reality.
They don't push her to get back to work.
Not at all. They do not demand faster production. They respond with intense support and share their own highly specific methods for healing and mental restoration.
And the data from those fan responses maps the psychological stakes perfectly. Like, a fan named Arimum details their personal process of taking early morning mountain hikes to watch the sunrise. Yeah, they observe the slow transition from complete darkness to light as a mechanism to realize the insignificance of daily stressors.
That's a profound way to reset.
It is. And another fan, Yoon, relies on a completely different auditory strategy. They listen to music at extremely high volumes to force a cognitive reset.
Basically drowning out internal anxiety with sheer acoustic power.
Exactly. But the source material provides an even more precise illustration of why Gwyn chose the beach.
Right, the acoustic properties of the environment.
Yes. A fan operating under the handle specifically discusses Mongdol Beach. They note the soothing sound of Mongdol, which are these rolling pebbles.
And this is not just a poetic observation, right? It highlights a profound acoustic truth.
Exactly. The repetitive grounding sound of the ocean, specifically the complex acoustic friction of thousands of rolling stones, it acts as a necessary auditory and psychological reset.
Because if you consider the environment of a modern high-end recording facility...
Oh, it's exhausting.
It really is. When you are operating in that space, your ears suffer from severe frequency fatigue. You are in an acoustically deadened room.
Where the producer is constantly analyzing micro-adjustments.
Right, in equalization, compression, spatial delay... You are listening to mathematically perfect, quantized beats on a loop for hours.
And the brain just becomes exhausted from processing this hyper-organized auditory data.
Exactly. So the ocean provides the exact opposite stimulus. The sound of rolling pebbles is chaotic, unpredictable, and unquantized.
It's natural acoustic noise.
Right. It acts as a sonic palate cleanser. It flushes the auditory cortex of all that mathematical studio precision.
Which is an absolute requirement before she can return to the complex studio architecture of a Code Kunst beat.
She needs fresh ears and a restored emotional baseline.
So understanding her restored mental state allows us to examine the actual architecture of this collaboration. The pairing of Gwyn Dorado and Code Kunst is, well, it's an unorthodox, highly deliberate decision by the show's producers.
Because Code Kunst operates primarily in the realm of moody, atmospheric hip-hop and R&B.
Right. He is known for deep sub-bass frequencies, isolated hi-hats, and a very distinct use of negative space in his mixes.
And a fan named Ochu, or No Type, explicitly points out the contrast in this pairing.
The temperature differential.
Exactly. They note the disparity between Code Kunst's signature coolness or solitude and Gwyn's inherent vocal warmth.
Which is massive.
It is. Gwyn possesses a resonant, emotionally rich vocal tone. So pairing that with a producer known for chill, minimalist soundscapes creates this massive temperature differential.
We really must analyze this temperature differential strategy because Code Kunst is not a traditional pop ballad producer.
He doesn't rely on lush, overwhelming orchestrations.
Or massive string sections, exactly. The architecture of the song will utilize structural contrast. When you pair a vocal powerhouse with a minimalist producer, you force the listener's ear directly onto the voice.
You eliminate all acoustic distractions.
Right. And the fan on also highlights a critical paradigm shift occurring in modern music production here.
Yes, this is so important. They observe that the producers on this show are actively tailoring the music to the artist's unique personalities.
Instead of just imposing a monolithic, one-sided production style.
Exactly. This represents a fundamental shift from dictation to true collaboration. Code Kunst is actively modulating his established aesthetic to accommodate the emotional narrative of Gwyn's vocals.
Which drastically increases mutual understanding between the two creatives.
And ensures the prosperity of the final track. You are engineering a bespoke hit perfectly tailored to the artist, rather than forcing a singer onto a generic pop commodity.
The structural mechanics of this pairing are just brilliant. I mean, think about it like high-end jewelry making.
Oh, I like this analogy.
If you have a brilliant, intensely warm gemstone,
Which represents Gwyn's vocal tone and emotional delivery.
exactly, you do not set it in an equally loud, overly ornate gold band covered in other diamonds. That just creates visual clutter.
It distracts from the main stone.
Right. The best analogy for this temperature differential is a master jeweler setting that warm gemstone into a sleek, minimalist, unpolished titanium band.
Which perfectly represents Code Kunst production.
Mm.
The stark, cold nature of the metal does not compete with the stone.
It fundamentally alters how the light reflects off it.
Yeah. The empty space created by the minimalist titanium band makes the warmth of the gemstone appear exponentially brighter.
More valuable and more immediate to the observer. Code Kunst is building the titanium band.
That is exactly what he's doing.
So we have mapped the producer's structural style and the artist's psychological mindset. We now have to dissect the actual lyrical material they're synthesizing.
Right. What is the story being told inside this minimalist framework?
Exactly. The object of inquiry is the precious object Gwyn mentions in her dispatch, something she has kept her whole life.
And she initiates a strategic engagement sequence by asking the Duraja to guess its identity.
And the data provides a fascinating spectrum of guesses from the fan base. They suggest a guitar, a private diary, a handwritten letter.
Childhood photos, a grandmother's ring.
Yeah, and interestingly, from a user named Tonanuano, there is a highly specific guess. A basketball.
A basketball. We need to systematically evaluate the commercial and emotional viability of these proposed objects as the core anchor for a hit song.
Let's evaluate the more traditional guesses first, like the grandmother's ring or the private diary.
Those objects possess extremely high intrinsic emotional resonance.
Absolutely. A ballad centered around a familial heirloom or a book of secret thoughts, it provides immediate universal intimacy.
The listener instantly understands the stakes of the object. It represents lineage, hidden truths, personal history.
It is a safe, highly effective emotional anchor.
It is safe, yes. But we must evaluate the basketball strategically. At first glance, a song about a basketball seems entirely counterintuitive for a deeply emotional, minimalist pop track.
Right, it sounds almost comical.
But it represents a massive commercial and artistic opportunity. If the song is literally just about playing basketball, sure, it falls flat.
But if the basketball is utilized as a structural metaphor, the potential is immense.
Exactly. Think of the acoustic and emotional properties of a basketball. It is a metaphor for resilience.
For the literal concept of bouncing back from adversity.
Yes. It evokes imagery of childhood dreams practiced on an empty court long after the streetlights come on.
Or the echoing sound of the ball hitting the pavement in isolation. As a lyrical hook, it offers a highly unique, non-cliché entry point.
It cuts completely through the predictable expected imagery of standard pop music.
But honestly, the precise identity of the object almost matters less than how it is architecturally deployed within the songwriting. The object is just a tool.
Because a hit song acts as an empty vessel.
Exactly. The specific object, whether it is a guitar, a ring, or a basketball, it must be written with a very specific, calculated tolerance.
It has to be specific enough in its sensory details to feel entirely authentic to the artist's lived experience.
Right. But it must remain porous enough to allow you, the listener, to pour your own precious memories into it.
Because if the lyrics dictate too many hyper-specific, alienating details about the object, the listener cannot project their own life onto the song.
And the mass market rejects it.
Conversely, if the lyrics are too vague and rely on generic platitudes about, holding on to memories,
then the song lacks an authentic soul and fails to connect. The specific object is merely the key designed to unlock the listener's own memory bank.
Which brings us to the most likely candidate. The mention of the guitar by several fans leads us directly into the most critical focal point of our entire analysis today.
Yes, the historical precedent.
A fan operating under the handle Pachai provides a deeply researched historical artifact. They guess the object is a very specific guitar.
One signed by the legendary music producer David Foster.
Right. And this event occurred during Gwyn's highly successful tenure on Asia's Got Talent.
The context of this historical data is absolutely vital. During her time on Asia's Got Talent, Gwyn performed an acoustic rendition of the massive EDM pop hit Titanium.
Which is a huge vocal challenge.
It is. And following that performance, David Foster provided direct, unvarnished feedback. Fan Pachai quotes Foster verbatim.
He said, "The band is not for her right now. This is where she is best."
Yes. Foster explicitly praised her inherent confidence and star quality, noting that true stardom requires an artist to know their exact trajectory and optimal acoustic environment.
And David Foster is a master architect of global pop music.
He possesses an elite understanding of frequency distribution and vocal production.
He really does. Years prior to this current television program, Foster identified the fundamental truth of Gwyn's vocal frequency.
Which is that her voice is so massive, so rich in mid-range harmonics, that it requires absolute isolation to achieve maximum market impact.
Foster recognized a phenomenon known as frequency masking.
Right. When you put a vocalist with Gwyn's power in front of a full, dense band arrangement,
Heavy drums, layered guitars, thick synthesizers.
those instruments actively compete for the exact same acoustic space as her vocal resonance.
The band diminishes her power. They muddy the emotional clarity of her delivery.
So Foster issued a clear, authoritative mandate on Asia's Got Talent: strip away the band.
Let the voice operate in a vacuum?
Let the sheer power of the vocal carry the entire emotional weight of the performance.
And we have to connect this historical prophecy to the exact present moment.
Yes, this is where it all comes together.
This is where the brilliance of the television show's producer pairing becomes undeniably clear. Code Kunst's signature production style is the modern electronic equivalent of stripping away the band.
It really is. He relies on sparse, atmospheric beats. He places his 808 bass lines far beneath the vocal register,
Leaving the entire mid-range completely empty.
He utilizes ambient spatial manipulation to create vast, echoing rooms.
Code Kunst is actively fulfilling David Foster's historical mandate. He is engineering the exact sonic vacuum required for Gwyn's confidence and star quality to detonate.
He is not building a dense, competitive track around her. He is building an expansive acoustic perimeter.
And this architecture forces the audience to focus entirely on her vocal delivery and the intricate emotional weight of the lyrics describing this lifelong, precious object.
Which brings us back to the immediate grounded reality of execution. We have analyzed the strategy, the producer, and the psychology.
But what is the fan base, the Dorado, doing right now in response to this data?
We're observing a highly functional symbiotic ecosystem between the artist and the Dorado.
In this specific architecture, the fans are not merely passive consumers waiting to stream a finalized audio product.
No, they act as active, essential emotional stabilizers for the artist during the arduous production phase.
I really want to highlight how profound this interaction is. The audience is actively granting the artist permission to rest.
They understand the immense pressure of the industry.
They do. They recognize that reducing her psychological suffering is an absolute prerequisite for the successful execution of her creative task.
They are managing her cognitive load from afar.
Exactly, so she can effectively prosecute the demanding work of creating the hit song with Code Kunst.
So I pose a direct question to you as a consumer of music. When you stream a track on your daily commute, do you ever fully recognize the immense psychological labor required to translate a deeply personal, perhaps painful, childhood artifact into a mathematically precise 3-minute audio file meant for mass public consumption?
That's an incredible amount of processing.
The engineering of a hit requires the extraction of a personal memory, the refinement of that memory through a producer's unforgiving architectural framework, and the delivery of that product on a high-stakes competitive platform.
It is an astonishing feat of endurance.
It really is. And the Dorado demonstrate a clear, empathetic understanding of this labor. They are providing the necessary psychological scaffolding for her to succeed.
They are ensuring she does not break under the weight of the famous singer's NeedHit songs mandate.
So we arrive at our final synthesis of this deep dive. We are observing a flawless strategic alignment.
A high-tier vocalist, transitioning from a competition platform to original artistry, recognizes the onset of fatigue.
And executes a vital mental pause at the ocean, utilizing natural acoustics to clear studio fatigue.
She then returns to collaborate with a minimalist producer who understands the acoustic power of vocal isolation.
And in doing so, they are perfectly fulfilling a prophecy laid down years ago by David Foster on Asia's Got Talent.
Together, they execute this sophisticated strategy to tell a meticulously engineered, deeply personal story about a lifelong artifact.
All designed to conquer the commercial market and achieve sustained prosperity.
I want to leave you with a final concept to process regarding the mechanics of this industry and the nature of hit songs.
Please do.
If a producer's ultimate job is to create a perfect, titanium sonic frame for an artist's most intimately held childhood memory, we must ask what happens at the point of total success.
Right.
What happens the moment that track hits #1 on the charts and is sung back by thousands of people in an arena? Does that deeply personal memory still belong to the artist who lived it?
Or does it become the permanent, irreversible emotional property of the millions of strangers who use it to process their own lives? Thank you for joining this deep dive.